on your knees. The command comes before she even crosses the threshold. Seravin drops without hesitation. She learned long ago that hesitation cost more than dignity. Look at it. High Lady Thessaly's voice purrs from somewhere above her, the split-haired freak. Tell me, Seravin, do you think the Supreme Alpha will even notice you exist tonight? Or will he look through you the way everyone always does? Seravin keeps her eyes on the stone floor. She knows the answer Thessaly wants. She gives it. He won't notice me, my lady. Thessaly laughs, a bright, practiced sound. Good girl. At least you know your place. But the moment Thessaly's footsteps fade down the corridor, something stirs deep in Seravin's chest. A warmth, a pressure, a voice that has been whispering for years, and tonight sounds dangerously close to a shout. He will notice you, the voice says quietly. They all will, and when they do, nothing in this world will ever be the same. Seravin presses her hand to her sternum, trying to push it down. Not tonight, she begs silently. Please not tonight. Because tonight is the convergence, the once-in-a-generation celestial alignment, when the spirit bonds of the entire realm are tested under the open sky. Every wolf-born in Varenthis will stand before the ancient stone circle. The powerful will be confirmed, the weak will be exposed. And Seravin, a servant with no rank, no family, and no visible bond, has been ordered to serve wine until it ends. She does not know that the ancient beast sleeping inside her has already decided. Tonight is the last night. It will be silent. She does not know that the Supreme Alpha, standing somewhere in this great hall right now, has carried an inexplicable hollow in his chest for 3 years, and that hollow is shaped exactly like her. She does not know any of it yet, but she is about to. The great hall of the Varenthis citadel breathes with the energy of 1,000 gathered wolves. Torches burn in long iron brackets along the cathedral walls, their flames bending toward the center of the room as if drawn by some invisible current. Tonight the air itself feels different, thicker, charged, ancient. Tonight is the convergence. Seravin moves through the crowd like water finding cracks, her tray held level, her eyes down. She has learned to make herself small, to fold herself into the margins of every room she enters. The wolf-born around her laugh and drink and radiate the easy confidence of the ranked. She passes unnoticed, just as she always does, except that she notices everything. The way the High Alpha of the Northern Ridge keeps touching the hilt of his blade, nervous despite his size. The way several of the Elder Council members exchange glances that carry no warmth. The way the massive obsidian doors at the far end of the hall have remained closed since she arrived, and the way every conversation in the room dims slightly whenever someone's eyes drift toward those doors. He hasn't entered yet. He is close, Mael's voice says inside her, warm and ancient, like the first word ever spoken. I can feel his wolf from here, even after all this time. Stop! Seravin thinks back sharply. She makes herself take another step. Offer another goblet. You don't know him. I don't know him. We are nobody. Seravin. Mael's voice doesn't argue. It simply says her name, and the weight of it is staggering. She has carried this voice for 6 years. Since the night she turned 18 and woke up in her small servant's room unable to breathe, something vast pressing against the inside of her ribs. The healers called it a dormant bond, not unusual in the lower ranked, sometimes taking years to fully materialize. High Lady Thessaly called it proof that she was defective, that whatever spirit was trying to wake inside her was too weak to complete the bond. Seravin had chosen to believe Thessaly. It was easier than believing Mael. They threw you away, Mael had told her. The first night she spoke in full sentences rather than feelings. Your parents were the last king and queen of the Vale line, the royal dynasty that governed all of Varenthis before the current order. Your mother hid you herself, wrapped in her own cloak, and placed you at the border of the Dawn territory, with nothing but the crescent mark under your eye as proof of who you were. She died 3 hours later, holding a door shut so your father's killers could not find you. Seravin had cried then. She'd pressed her face into her thin pillow and shaken with the kind of grief that comes from losing something you never got to hold. Then she'd made herself stop. I am nobody's daughter, she had decided. I am not a princess. Princesses do not scrub stone floors until their hands bleed. If my blood was royal, I would feel it. I feel nothing. You feel me, Mael had said quietly, and Seravin had no answer for that. The obsidian doors open. The room doesn't go quiet. It doesn't have to. The silence falls on its own, the way it always does when something approaches that carries more gravity than everything around it. Seravin doesn't look up immediately. She is focused on keeping her tray steady. She is focused on being invisible. But her body betrays her. A wave of warmth rolls through her chest so sudden and complete that she nearly drops the tray. Her breath catches. Her fingers tighten around the silver stem of a goblet she's not even holding to anyone. The warmth spreads outward. Chest, throat, fingertips, and then pulls, a direction, a compass point, a gravitational tug she has never felt from any source outside her own mind. She looks up. Calder Vane, Supreme Alpha of the Varenthis realm, walks through the open doors like the night sky, walking into a room it built. His dark hair, his near-white silver eyes, his expression of total composed authority. She has seen his image on council flags and ceremonial seals her entire life. She knows exactly who he is. She has never been in the same room as him before. The pull in her chest doubles. There, Mael breathes, with a reverence Seravin has never heard from her before. Do you feel it? She feels it. It terrifies her. She drops her gaze immediately, stepping back into the shadow of a pillar. Her heart is hammering. Her hands are cold. She forces herself to breathe through her nose. This is not real. This is not real. She is a servant. He is the Supreme Alpha of an entire realm. The mate bond does not connect wolves who exist in different universes. And yet, Mael says softly. Seravin does not answer. She retreats further. She tells herself she is imagining it. She serves the rest of her rounds with her head down and her jaw locked. She does not allow herself to look toward him again. For 40 minutes she manages it. Then the convergence ceremony begins. The entire gathering moves from the hall to the ceremonial grounds. A vast open space beyond the citadel walls, ringed by standing stone so ancient their origins predate written record. The sky above is a deep indigo, stars pressing close in the absence of any moon. The convergence alignment is at its peak. The standing stones have begun to emit a soft, resonant hum that Seravin can feel in her back teeth. Her orders are clear. She is to stand at the perimeter with the other serving staff, trays lowered, invisible, and wait for the ceremony to conclude. She takes her position at the outer ring. High Lady Thessaly steps forward into the stone circle with practiced grace, her auburn hair gleaming, her burgundy silks catching the starlight. She glances once toward where Seravin stands, a brief flicker of contempt so habitual it barely qualifies as conscious, and then turns her attention to the ceremony. The elders begin the invocation, ancient words that make the stones pulse brighter. One by one, the High Alphas step into the circle for their spirit bond confirmation. Their beasts rise, wolves of fire, wolves of shadow, wolves of stone and light, each one crackling with power as the alignment amplifies the bond. Seravin watches from the edge. She should feel nothing. She has no confirmed bond. She is here to hold a tray. But the humming of the stones is getting louder. Inside her chest, something is pressing harder than it ever has before. Not pushing to speak, pushing to exist, pushing to be real in a way it has never been permitted to be. Seravin. Mael's voice has changed. It's not the warm, patient voice of her internal companion. It is vast and resonant, like it is coming from somewhere much larger than the space inside one person. I have waited long enough. I have given you every chance to choose this for yourself. If you will not step forward, I will. No, Seravin thinks, panic flaring. Mael, please, you cannot. They will destroy us. They will see what I am, and they will. What you are, Mael says, is the last heir of the Veil line, and I am the Sapphire Sovereign, and we have hidden in this darkness long enough. The pain begins at her sternum. Not sharp, deep. A pressure that expands outward like something enormous trying to unfold itself in a space too small. Seravin bites the inside of her cheek and grips the edge of her tray so hard the metal bends. Around her, the ceremony continues. No one is looking at her. Then the stone nearest to her position begins to glow. Not the pale gold of the ceremony light, a deep, vivid sapphire blue. Heads turn. The elder leading the invocation stops mid-word. Seravin drops the tray. It hits the ground with a sound like a struck bell. She wraps her arms around herself, trying to hold it in, trying to contain whatever is about to tear through her. But Mael is no longer asking. The pressure becomes a wave. The wave becomes a tide, and the tide cannot be stopped. Silver-white light erupts from her skin. Seravin's sapphire blue hair blazes, the silver-white half igniting with pure light. The standing stones respond as if struck, their ancient carvings flaring brilliant blue, illuminating patterns that have not been visible in over a century. The royal crest of the Vale, dynasty, carved into the stones at the founding of the realm. Bones shift. The world splits open. And where a grey-dressed servant girl had stood at the edge of everything, a celestial wolf now rises. Massive, regal, impossibly still. Sapphire blue fur shimmers with an internal silver light, the colour of the deep ocean lit from below. Silver-white markings flow across her chest, shoulders and face in patterns of breathtaking intricacy. Ancient royal crests, now alive and glowing. Her eyes are pure liquid silver light. At her throat, a gemstone the colour of the deepest sea pulses once, twice, like a heartbeat recognised after long absence. The silence that falls over the gathering is absolute. Every wolf in the circle has dropped their eyes instinctively, not from disrespect, from the bone-deep deference that comes when something ancient and supreme demands it. Every wolf except one. Carl Devane has not dropped his eyes. He is staring at the sapphire sovereign with an expression that has cracked clean through the practiced blankness, raw and still and unmistakable. The hollow that has lived in his chest for 3 years has gone completely, utterly silent, because it is no longer empty. Impossible, one of the elders breathes. That crest, another whispers, staring at the glowing stones. That is the Vale line. That has not been seen since the dynasty fell. High Lady Thessaly stands frozen at the centre of the circle. Her amber eyes are wide, her expression cycling between disbelief, fury, and something close to fear. She looks from the enormous glowing wolf to the Supreme Alpha, and what she sees in his face makes her go very, very still. Calder takes one step forward, then another. He walks across the ceremonial circle with the kind of unhurried certainty that comes from a man who has already made a decision, and is simply walking toward its conclusion. The gathered elders part without being asked. No one speaks, no one dares. He stops directly in front of the sapphire sovereign. The wolf is immense. Her shoulder reaches his chest. Her silver eyes find his silver eyes and hold, and the world narrows down to that single point of contact. The mate bond between them blazes to life. Not gradually, not gently, like a door kicked open. Calder's jaw tightens. He breathes once, controlled. Then his voice comes. Quiet, carrying across the silent grounds with total authority. I, Calder Vane, Supreme Alpha of the Varenthis realm, dissolve the bond agreement with High Lady Thessaly Dawn. Before these stones, before these witnesses, and before whatever power lives in this woman's blood. Thessaly makes a sound, half gasp, half ridge, but he is already turning back to the wolf. You have been hiding, he says. His voice drops. There is something in it now that has not been there in years. I don't know why. I don't know who did this to you, but you are not hiding anymore. Inside the Sapphire Sovereign, Seravin is shaking. She can feel everything. His voice, the bond, the weight of 10,000 eyes, the carvings blazing on the ancient stones, the name of a dynasty she was never supposed to know she belonged to, now announced in light, visible to every wolf on these grounds. Breathe, Mael says, and her voice has returned to warmth. You are no longer alone, dear heart. You never were. Seravin breathes, and for the first time in her life, something shifts in the foundation of who she believes herself to be. Not gone, not healed, not suddenly brave, but cracked open. Enough. Outside, Thessaly has gone cold and still in the way of someone constructing rather than reacting. She turns slowly away from the circle. Her eyes find one of her attendants at the perimeter. The look she passes is surgical. In the shadows beyond the standing stones, a rider is already preparing to leave. A message that cannot wait until morning. Somewhere far from here, a man who has spent 22 years erasing a bloodline is about to learn that he failed. The night after the convergence does not sleep. Neither does Seravin. She sits in the chamber Calder's attendants have placed her in. Not a servant. S-room. Nothing like any room she has ever occupied. High ceilings, a fire laid properly in the hearth, a bed with actual weight to its blankets. She is perched at the edge of it like someone who does not trust furniture, that was not meant for her, still wearing the grey dress, now torn at both shoulders from the shift. Someone has brought her a robe. She has not touched it. She is staring at her hands. Her hair falls across both sides of her face, sapphire blue on the left, silver white on the right, the divide as sharp and absolute as it has always been. She used to tuck the blue side under a headscarf in public. Thessaly required it. Distasteful, she had called it. Like wearing a bruise on your face. Seravin does not reach for the headscarf now. She does not know what she reaches for. Rest, Mael says from inside her, quieter than she was at the Standing Stones. Back to warmth, back to patience. You have just done something your body has never done before. You need rest. What I need, Seravin thinks, is someone to tell me that what happened tonight was real. That I did not imagine all of it. The Supreme Alpha dissolved a political bond in front of the entire realm's high alphas to stand in front of your wolf form, Mael says, with the faintest quality that might be humour if an ancient spirit beast was capable of it. I would call that real. Seravin closes her eyes. She had shifted back in the circle. Slowly, agonizingly, under the weight of every eye in Varenthis. The return had been harder than the emergence, her body trembling with exhaustion and shock, the vast power of Mael retreating back into the space beneath her sternum like a tide pulling back out, to see. She'd found herself kneeling on the cold stone in her ruined dress, hair loose, hands shaking, exactly as exposed as she had always feared. Calder had offered her his hand. Not a command, not a gesture of authority, just a hand offered. As if she had the choice to take it or refuse. She had taken it. She does not know if that was brave, or simply because her legs would not have managed the standing otherwise. He had walked her through the parted crowd, the gathered high alphas and their retinues, the elders, the whole assembled power of the realm watching in stunned silence as the Supreme Alpha escorted a servant girl with split hair away from the bruised ceremonial grounds. He had not spoken to any of them. He had not offered explanation or defense. He had simply walked, and she had walked beside him, and the crowd had moved. Now she is sitting on this bed, and he is somewhere else in this citadel. And she has absolutely no understanding of what comes next. A knock at the door. She straightens. Come in. It is not Calder. It is an elder. A woman of advanced years with silver hair wound in a tight knot and eyes the colour of dark amber. She carries herself with the particular straightness of someone who has not bowed to anything in decades. She steps inside and closes the door with deliberate care. My name is Elder Vane Solara, the woman says, stopping several feet away. I was one of the founding council members at the last convergence cycle, 24 years ago. I have been a part of this realm's governance longer than most of its current residents have been alive. Seravin watches her. Why are you here? The elder's expression does not change, but something behind it shifts. Something that looks almost like recognition, almost like grief. Because I owe you that, she says quietly. And because I owe your mother far more than I will ever be able to repay. The word hits Seravin like cold water. She is very still. What did you say? Elder Solara moves to the chair near the fire and sits, folding her hands in her lap, not settling in, steadying herself. Your mother's name was Lyra Vale, she begins, and her voice carries the particular steadiness of someone who has rehearsed this and is doing it anyway. She was the last queen of the Vale dynasty. Intelligent, principled, devastating in council chambers, and completely impossible to rattle. She was my closest friend for 19 years. Seravin's throat tightens. She does not speak. She knew in the last weeks of her life that the end was coming. Her husband, your father, King Aldrich Vale, had made an enemy he could not outmaneuver. Not a foreign power, not a rival pack. The elder pauses. Someone inside their own inner circle. Listen carefully, Mael says inside her. This part matters. They were betrayed, the elder continues. by the person who had been their most trusted advisor and general for 15 years. The architect of 3 military victories, a man who held more loyalty from the Vale armies than the king himself had earned in a decade of rule. She meets Serovin's eyes, a man who had also, quietly and methodically, spent those 15 years building allegiances with every rival faction that wanted the Vale line ended. Serovin's lips part. The name she has carried from Mael rises in her throat. Her uncle, the betrayer, the man who took everything. But Elder Solara says a different name entirely. His name was Harren Dawn. The world tilts. Serovin stares at her. Dawn, she repeats. The word feels wrong in her mouth. Wrong in the way that things feel wrong when they are actually correct. And you weren't ready. High Lady Thessaly Dawn's father, Elder Solara says. The man who destroyed your dynasty, murdered your parents, and placed his family in the seat of power they now occupy, before quietly maneuvering his daughter into position as the Supreme Alpha's bonded Luna. Serovin stands. She does not plan to. Her body simply decides that sitting is no longer possible. Thessaly knows. It is not a question. The Elder's expression answers before her words do. She has known since she was 16 years old, Solara says. She was told by her father as a reward for her obedience, a gift, the secret of how the Dawn family rose to their position. A pause. She has always known exactly who you were. That is why she acquired you. The word acquired lands with the weight of something that has always been true and is only now making complete sense. Serovin thinks of 6 years. 6 years of scrubbing Thessaly's floors. 6 years of Thessaly's particular brand of cruelty. Not random, never random, always precise. Always targeted at the specific places that would keep Serovin smallest. The headscarf requirement, the isolation from other servants. The way Thessaly had always watched her with those amber eyes as if waiting for something. Not contempt. Surveillance. She was keeping me close, Serovin says, and her voice comes out strange, very quiet, very flat. She knew what I carried. She was making sure she would see it the moment it manifested. So she could control it, the Elder finishes, or end it. Yes. Then tonight, Serovin stops, breathes. The implications are arranging themselves with horrible clarity. Tonight was not random. The convergence alignment. It was the first time in 24 years the conditions could awaken a Vale line bond. Thessaly knew it was coming. She knew I would shift tonight. She put me in that ceremony on purpose. Yes, Elder Solara says, she needed me visible. Serovin's voice is barely above a breath. She needed it to happen in front of the Supreme Alpha, in front of everyone, so that when she had me killed afterward, it would be a public elimination of a threat to the realm's stability, rather than a murder. She was going to use the reveal itself as the reason for my execution. The fire pops in the hearth. Elder Solara is quiet for a moment. When she speaks, her voice is very careful. You are quick. I have survived on reading people's intentions for my entire life. Serovin turns toward the window. Outside, the Citadel grounds are lit with the remaining torch lines from the ceremony. Everywhere she looks, she can see figures in motion, more than should be moving at this hour. Where is Thessaly now? That, the Elder says, and there is a new quality in her voice. Not alarm, but its more dangerous cousin, the one that has already assessed and calculated, is the other reason I came tonight. Serovin turns. Thessaly left the ceremonial grounds within minutes of the Supreme Alpha's declaration. The Elder holds her gaze steadily. She did not go to her quarters. She went to the Citadel's messenger station. 2 riders left within the half hour. We do not know yet where they were directed. My uncle Mael says inside her, low and certain. She is calling in what her father built, the Dawn Alliance. Every pack that owes their current position to Harren Dawn's maneuvering. How many? Mael is quiet for 1 beat too long. Enough. Serovin presses a hand to the window frame. The cold of the stone anchors her. There is something else. Elder Solara rises from the chair. She reaches into the fold of her robe and withdraws something small, a piece of cloth. So old it has gone from whatever colour it once was to a deep, indeterminate grey. She holds it out. Serovin crosses to her and takes it. She unwraps it carefully. Inside is a ring. Simple, unadorned, the metal a deep silver blue that shifts colour with the firelight. Set in its centre is a single sapphire, no larger than her thumbnail, but cut in a pattern she has seen before. The same pattern as the markings on the standing stones, the same pattern that glows on Mael's fur. Your mother pressed this into my hand the night she sent you away, Elder Solara says quietly. She told me to find you when the time came. She told me you would know what it was. Seravin stares at the ring. She does not know what it is, but Mael does. It is a key, the spirit beast says, and her voice has gone very still. A Vale Dynasty key. There is a chamber beneath the original royal hall. The hall that existed before the current order raised it and built the citadel above it. The chamber was never found. It was never found because only a Vale bloodline holding that ring can open the entrance. What is in it? Everything, Mael says. Every proof, every record. The truth of what Harren Dawn did, documented in your parents' own hand, sealed before they died. Your mother knew she would not survive. She preserved everything she could. Seravin closes her fingers around the ring. She does not allow herself to feel the grief of it yet. Later, she will feel it later, when there is time. Right now she presses it to her palm and holds it there and breathes. Thank you, she says to the Elder. Her voice is steadier than she expects. Elder Solara studies her for a long moment. Her expression is not quite grief, not quite relief. Something older than either. She would be proud of you, she says simply. Then she crosses to the door, pauses with her hand on the latch. I would recommend that whatever you intend to do with what I have told you, you not wait long. Thessaly moves quickly when she has been embarrassed. It is a Dawn family trait. She leaves. Seravin stands in the centre of the room, the ring warm in her fist, the fire burning down behind her. She has perhaps 6 hours before dawn. She has a key to a chamber that contains proof capable of dismantling everything the Dawn family built. She has a mate bond to a man she met less than 3 hours ago, and she has absolutely no idea who in this citadel she can trust. One, Mael says, reading her thoughts as she always does. There is one. She is already moving toward the door. She finds Calder in the war room. Of course she does. Of course he is not sleeping. Of course he is standing over a map table at 2 hours past midnight, surrounded by papers and the remnants of a conversation that clearly ended moments before she knocked. She can see from the expressions of the two commanders leaving as she enters that the conversation was not pleasant. He dismisses them with a look. The door closes behind them. They are alone for the first time since the Standing Stones. In the ceremony, with 10,000 years of celestial alignment pressing down on the moment, his presence was vast and untouchable. Here, in a room lit by working candles rather than ancient power, he is simply present, tall and still, and watching her cross the room with those near-white eyes that miss nothing. You should be sleeping, he says. So should you. She stops on the opposite side of the map table and meets his gaze directly. She is done with looking at floors. I need to tell you something. Several things. And then I need to ask you something, and the answer you give is going to determine whether I trust you. So I need you to be honest with me, even if the honest answer is complicated. Something moves in his expression, not quite surprise. He does not look like a man who is surprised often. More like attention. The sharpening of something that was already sharp. All right, he says. She places the ring on the map table between them. She tells him everything. She tells him about Mael, 6 years of the voice, the suppression, the choice to keep hiding. She tells him what Elder Solara came to say. The Dawn name, her father's betrayal, Thessaly's 6 years of deliberate proximity and surveillance, the riders that left in the night. She watches his face as she speaks, and she sees, very clearly, the moment each piece of information lands, not with shock, but with the particular expression of a man whose suspicions are being confirmed rather than formed. That detail does not escape her. When she finishes, she says, You already suspected something about the Dawns. He is quiet for a moment, then, Harren Dawn died 4 years ago. He left extensive documentation of his military career to the realm's archives. I spent 3 months reviewing those archives before I agreed to the bond with Thessaly. His jaw set slightly. There were gaps, structured gaps, the kind that exist when someone has removed information rather than when information never existed. But you agreed to the bond anyway. The political stability it provided outweighed the gaps I couldn't prove. He holds her gaze. I made a calculation. It was a cold one. I am aware it was also wrong. She appreciates that he says it plainly. The question, she says, is the one that determines the trust. Ask it. Seravin picks up the ring. The chamber beneath this citadel, beneath what used to be the Vale Royal Hall. If I can open it, and if there is documentation inside that proves the Dawn family's rise to power was built on my parents' murder. What do you do with that? The room is very quiet. Calder is still for a long moment. His silver eyes hold hers across the table with a steadiness she feels in her bones. I dismantle them, he says, completely. Every alliance, every position, every advantage the Dawn name currently holds in this realm. It ends, legally, publicly, and permanently. A pause, and then something shifts in his voice. Quieter now, but in a way that carries more weight rather than less. And I spend whatever remains of my leadership making right. What was allowed to happen to a child, the realm was meant to protect. Seravin holds the ring tighter. She is looking at him very carefully. He is not performing. She has spent 6 years in close proximity to performance, to the practiced ease of Thessaly's expressions and the calculated warmth of the Dawn, household's public face. She knows what truth looks like when it is trying to sound like something else. This is not that. All right, she says. She closes her hand around the ring. Then we need to find the entrance before dawn. The passage downward exists where Mael said it would. Behind the oldest wall in the citadel's cellar, a section of stone so thoroughly unremarkable that it has apparently never warranted investigation. Seravin presses the ring to the seam in the dark, Mael guiding her hands, and the stone simply moves, not dramatically, not with any display of ancient grandeur. It simply recedes, quietly, as if it has been waiting to be asked. Calder moves in first, one hand finding a torch bracket just inside. He lights it. They descend together. The chamber at the bottom is not large. It is dense. The walls are lined with sealed documents in metal cases, stacked with the careful organization of people who knew they were preserving rather than filing. At the center, a single table holds a locked box. The ring opens that too. Inside, correspondence, records, documentation in 2 different hands, one sweeping and assured, one smaller and meticulous. Her father's and her mother's, she understands without needing to be told. Calder stands at her shoulder as she opens the first document. She reads for 3 minutes, then she sets it down carefully, her hands completely steady, and breathes. The scope of it is complete. Harren Dawn had not simply murdered her parents. He had spent 15 years systematically removing every safeguard that might have protected the Vale line, every loyal general, every council member with genuine independence. He had engineered the political conditions for the takeover with the same meticulous attention he apparently brought to everything. The documentation names names, dates. It names every current High Alpha family whose position traces back to Dawn alliances. It names at the very bottom of the final page, one name she was not expecting. She goes very still. Seravin. Calder's voice is careful. He has been reading alongside her. He has reached the same line. She looks up at him. His expression is not blank now. There is anger in it. Not hot. Not explosive, but the cold and bottomless kind that comes from someone who made a decision in good faith and is discovering exactly what it cost. The bond agreement with Thessaly, she says quietly. It wasn't Harren Dawn's idea to arrange it. No, he says, it was Thessaly's, proposed directly to your council 3 years ago when she was 22. Seravin looks back at the document, because Mael's presence was becoming stronger as I got closer to 24. Thessaly could feel it, the bond's proximity to activation. She had grown up knowing I was in her household. She could feel the power building. A breath. She moved herself into position as your bonded Luna, specifically to ensure that when the Sapphire Sovereign finally awoke, you would be bound to her house. She intended to control the response. The silence that follows is dense. Calder's hand rests on the edge of the document table. She can see, at the edge of her vision, the careful control he is maintaining over his expression. 3 years, he says quietly. She was in my court for 3 years. She had access to my counsels, my strategies, my alliances. And to you, Seravin says, and she is not saying it cruelly. She is saying it because it is true and they both need to face it. His jaw tightens. We need to move these documents tonight, he says. Before she discovers what we know. There's more. Seravin picks up the last sealed case. Inside, wrapped in her mother's distinctive small handwriting, is a document she has not opened yet. Her name is on the outside. Not the heir, not the princess. Her name, Seravin, written by a woman who knew her daughter would have a name, even if she never got to give it to her. Her hands are not steady anymore. Open it, Mael says gently. She does. The letter is not long. It is 3 paragraphs. It says what it needs to say, and no more, which tells Seravin something about the woman who wrote it. It says, I know you will have grown up, not knowing who you are. I know the world will have been unkind to you in ways that were our failure to prevent. I know you will have had to be braver than you should have needed to be, alone without us. It says, you carry the Sapphire Sovereign not as a burden, but as a gift. She chose our line because our line chose justice, and as long as you choose it too, you will always know what to do. It says, at the very end, the bond you carry, when it wakes, will find its match. Do not be afraid of that. Your father and I were fated too, and it was the greatest thing that ever happened to either of us. Seravin closes the letter. She does not cry. There is not time right now to cry. She folds it very carefully and puts it inside her dress, over her heart. Then she picks up the metal document case and turns to face Calder. We take everything, she says. Her voice is very clear. We take it to the Elder Council tonight, before dawn, before Thessaly's riders can reach whoever they're riding to. We lay it all out. Calder looks at her for a moment, at the split sapphire and silver hair, at the crescent scar beneath her eye, at whatever is showing in her face right now, that she cannot see, but he clearly can. Yes, he says simply. They gather everything. They are halfway back up the passage when the sound reaches them. Not thunder, not the stones settling. The unmistakable, deliberate, coordinated percussion of a large body of wolves approaching from outside the citadel walls. Thessaly's riders did not go to one destination. They went to several, and they were faster than anyone anticipated. Calder stops. His expression goes to stone, not blank, but tactical, every piece of him reorganizing into something built for exactly this. He looks at Seravin, and there is no hesitation in it, no calculation. How much of Mael can you call right now? Seravin closes her eyes for one breath. She can feel the Sapphire Sovereign beneath her ribs, vast and ancient and fully awake for the first time in 24 years, no longer interested in hiding. All of it, Mael says. Seravin opens her eyes. All of it, she tells him. Something crosses his face. Something that in a different moment, under a different sky, she might have called wonder. Then stay close, he says, and follow my lead until I tell you it's time to follow yours. They move up together into the dark and the sound of what is coming. The citadel grounds erupt. The outer gates have held. Calder's own wolves are well trained and positioned correctly. But the scale of the incoming force is immediately clear, from the first reports that reach them as they emerge from the cellar passage into the main hall. 3 packs. Not Thessaly's alone. 3 family names, all traceable, Seravin already knows, to Harrendawn's legacy alliances. This was not assembled in a single night. This was assembled over years and held in readiness, waiting for exactly this, waiting for her. The hall is controlled chaos, commanders receiving runners, guards taking positions, the Elder Council being escorted toward the secure inner chambers. Calder moves through it with a composure that is not detachment. It is a man in complete command of what his mind and body are doing, even while the situation is rapidly shifting around him. He issues 4 orders in quick succession, all of them absorbed and executed without question. Then Elder Solara appears at the edge of the hall. Her eyes find Seravin immediately. They are calling for her surrender, the Elder says, her voice low and flat, with the particular quality of someone reporting the truth of something outrageous without letting the outrage show. Their stated justification is that the Sapphire Sovereign's awakening represents a destabilizing force with illegitimate claim to the Varenth's throne. They are framing it as a defense of the current order. It's Thessaly's framing, Seravin says. Yes, the elder says. She is outside the gates. She made the demand herself. Seravin looks at Calder. He is watching her with those silver eyes, and she can read him now. She realizes. She can read him in the specific way that the bond allows, the way that has nothing to do with magic, and everything to do with two people who have been paying attention to each other. Since the moment they were in the same room, he is waiting, not because he doesn't know what he would choose. She can see in the set of his jaw that he knows exactly what he would choose. He is waiting because this choice is not his to make. This choice has always been hers. Her mother's letter is warm against her chest. As long as you choose justice, you will always know what to do. She looks at Elder Solara. The documents from the chamber. Can you get them to the council in the inner hall right now? Every piece of it laid out before witnesses before this ends. Already moving, the elder says, and Seravin realizes the woman had that in motion before she even asked, because Elder Solara has been waiting for this moment too. She turns to Calder. Don't follow me out, she says. Not immediately. Give me 60 seconds. His expression shifts sharply. Seravin, 60 seconds, she repeats, then follow. She does not wait for his agreement. She walks toward the main doors. Together, Mael says inside her, warm and vast and certain. Together, she answers. The doors open. The night outside is thick with wolves. 3 packs worth of force arranged across the citadel grounds. Their collective presence a wall of pressure and challenge. Torches everywhere. The sky at the eastern edge is barely beginning to lighten. At the center of the formation stands Thessaly. Her burgundy silks are gone. She wears armor, not ceremonial. Actual armor, dark and fitted, and chosen by someone who intended to be taken seriously. Her auburn hair is down. Her amber eyes find Seravin across the distance. And there is nothing in them now that pretends to be anything other than what it is. I will give you one chance, Thessaly says. Her voice carries easily in the still air. She is performing for the wolves behind her. Leave. Remove yourself from this realm. Whatever that creature inside you thinks it can claim here, it cannot. The veil line is finished. The realm moved on. You have no place here. Seravin stands in the open doorway. She is still wearing a torn grey servant's dress. Her split hair, sapphire blue and silver white, moves in the morning air. She does not say anything. She closes her eyes, and she lets Mael rise. The shift does not feel like it did at the Standing Stones. At the Standing Stones, it was an eruption. Something torn open. Something that had been held down for so long it came up violent and blinding and uncontrolled. This is different. This is a door opened from the inside by someone who knows exactly where the handle is. Seravin breathes out, and the Sapphire Sovereign rises. There is no explosion of light this time. The power moves through her like deep water, patient, inevitable, immense. The shift rolls from her center, outward, unhurried, and the wolf that emerges into the pre-dawn air of the citadel grounds does not burst into being. She simply arrives, enormous, still. The deep sapphire blue of her fur holds the darkness of the hour in it, the silver-white markings across her chest, and face catching the torchlight and throwing it back multiplied, ancient royal crests glowing in soft silver against the blue. Her eyes are pure liquid silver light. The gemstone at her throat pulses once, steadily, like a heartbeat that has been waiting its whole existence to beat without apology. The silence that falls over the 3 assembled packs is not the silence of the Standing Stones, not shock, not awe alone. It is something older and more fundamental, something that lives in the part of every wolfborn, that predates language and culture and political alliance, recognition. Every wolf on these grounds, regardless of which house flag they came under, regardless of what they were told this force would be when they rode here tonight. Every one of them knows, in the place that cannot lie, exactly what they are looking at. The Sapphire Sovereign, the spirit beast of the Vale Royal line, not legend, not history. Here, Thessaly's composure fractures at the edges. She holds it. She is extraordinary at holding things together. Seravin has watched her do it for 6 years, but the fracture is visible, a hairline crack running through the performance. Her amber eyes move from the wolf to her assembled forces and back, calculating rapidly, and Seravin can read the calculation because she has always been able to read Thessaly. She is assessing whether the wolves behind her will hold. Several of them have already taken one involuntary step back. "It is a display," Thessaly says sharply, pitching her voice toward her forces. "Power without legitimacy. A beast without a throne. This changes nothing. Advance. No one advances. The silence holds. And then the Sapphire Sovereign does something that no one on these grounds expected. She does not attack. She sits. Deliberately, completely, with the composed authority of something that has never needed to prove itself through aggression. She lowers her haunches and sits in the torchlight and simply looks at Thessaly with those silver eyes. And the looking is somehow more devastating than any display of power could have been, because it says, without words, without threat, "I am not afraid of you. I have never been afraid of you, and I think you have always known that." Thessaly's jaw tightens. "Now," Mael says inside the stillness, the Sapphire Sovereign raises her head and howls. It is not loud in the way thunder is loud. It is deep, resonant. It moves through the ground rather than the air, felt in the bones of every living thing in the Citadel and beyond. It carries the specific frequency of something ancient calling to what recognizes it, and what recognizes it is everywhere. In the standing stones which begin to glow their sapphire blue across the grounds, the royal crests lighting again, unmistakable to anyone who knows the realm's history. In the old wolves among the assembled forces, who have lived long enough to have been told by their own elders what that crest means. In the stones of the citadel itself, built above the hall, that the Vale dynasty raised, which has never forgotten what it was built on top of. The howl rolls outward, and from inside the citadel, the Elder Council hears it. The doors behind Seravin open. Calder walks out. He has not shifted. He walks in his human form, unhurried, in the manner of a man who needs no display because his authority has never depended on one. He carries nothing except himself, but one of his senior commanders follows 2 steps behind, carrying the document case from the chamber beneath, sealed and marked with the Elder Council's witness seal, applied in the last 40 minutes. Calder stops beside the Sapphire Sovereign. He does not look at Thessaly first. He looks at the assembled forces, at the 3 packs arranged across his grounds, and he looks at them the way. He looks at everything, completely, patiently, without flinching. "By now," he says, and his voice carries the way it always carries, without effort, to every corner of the space. "Your leadership has told you that you came here tonight to defend the realm's stability against an illegitimate claim." A pause. "I want to tell you what you actually came here for." Silence. "You came here," Calder continues, "because Thessaly Dawn sent riders to your alphas in the middle of the night and called in 15 years of Dawn family obligation. You came here because your houses have been bound to hers since her father, Harren Dawn, arranged their rise to prominence." He lets that sit for a breath. "I want to tell you how Harren Dawn arranged that prominence." He nods to his commander. The commander opens the document case. From across the grounds, the papers are not readable, but their existence, their official sealing, the weight of them is. Documented evidence of the murder of King Aldrich Vale and Queen Lyra Vale. Calder says, each word measured and clear, documented in their own hand before they died. Witnessed tonight by 7 members of the realm's Elder Council, whose seals are on that case. What Harren Dawn did to the Vale dynasty is now a matter of official record. What that means for every alliance built on the foundation of what he did is a conversation this realm will have openly, beginning at dawn. He turns to Thessaly then. He looks at her for a long moment. "You have been in my court for 3 years, he says quietly. The quiet is more damning than volume would be. You had access to my counsels, my planning, my trust, to the extent I gave it. You used it to protect your family's crime." A pause. "I am not going to speak to you about this further tonight. The Elder Council will. Thessaly's composure does not break completely. Seravin has to give her that. She stands in her dark armor with the torches behind her and her assembled forces in front of her, and she holds herself together with the extraordinary discipline of someone who has been building and managing and controlling for so long that even the moment of collapse looks like a choice. But her voice, when it comes, is wrong. Too high, too fast, the performance finally losing the thread. You are choosing a slave over the stability of the realm, she says. You are choosing a ghost bloodline and a beast that has been buried for 24 years over every alliance this court depends on. You will tear apart everything. For what? For her? The Sapphire Sovereign does not react. Neither does Calder. It is Seravin who answers, and she does not answer as the wolf. Mael recedes gently, and Seravin stands in her human form in her ruined grey dress on the citadel steps, and she looks at the woman who kept her, and she speaks. You spent 6 years making me as small as possible, she says. Not loudly, not with heat. You took my name from the servants' records. You took my headscarf away whenever you wanted to remind yourself of the mark you were watching. You arranged every day of my life around managing what you were afraid I would become. She holds Thessaly's gaze across the space between them. I want you to understand something. I do not hate you for that. I spent a long time being afraid of you, and then a long time being ashamed, and now I feel sorry for you. Because you spent 6 years standing next to something you knew was extraordinary, and the only thing it ever made you feel was afraid. Thessaly stares at her. The assembled forces are completely still. Your father took everything from my family, Seravin says. I am not going to take anything from you. That is what the difference between our bloodlines actually means. The silence that follows is the loudest thing Seravin has ever heard. Then, from somewhere in the middle of the assembled forces, from a wolf in the second rank of what Seravin thinks is the Kale Pack, a family that lost considerable standing in the transition from the Vale Order and has been waiting 24 years to know why, a knee touches the ground, one wolf kneeling, then the wolf beside him, then the one beside that. It moves through the assembled forces like the howl moved through the ground. Not a wave, not a cascade, something deeper and slower and more permanent than either. It spreads from the center outward, and it is not performance and it is not fear. It is the specific recognition that comes when something true is confirmed after a very long time of being required to pretend otherwise. Thessaly watches it happen. Her face, for the first and only time, shows something that is not performance. It is old and tired and completely without defense, and it lasts for only a moment before she closes it away again. She does not kneel. She does not run. She stands with her chin up while her forces fold around her, and she waits, with the dignity of someone who always knew this moment was a possibility for what comes next. 2 members of the Elder Council appear at the citadel doors. They walk past Seravin with careful respect, down the steps, across the grounds. They stop before Thessaly. High Lady Thessaly Dawn. Elder Solara's voice says from behind them, carrying from the doorway, by the authority of the Elder Council of Varenthis, you are summoned to give account. Thessaly goes with them. She does not look back at Seravin. Seravin watches her go. She breathes. The citadel grounds empty slowly. The 3 packs withdraw in good order, their alphas speaking quietly with Calder's commanders, the particular careful formality of people who need to negotiate the distance between where they were an hour ago and where they intend to be. Tomorrow, it will take time. It will take more than one dawn, but the conversation has begun, and conversations begun on ground this solid tend not to stop. The standing stones across the ceremonial grounds have gone quiet. They're sapphire, glow faded back to old, unmarked stone. But Seravin knows what is carved in them now. She knows the crests are there even when they are not lit, and she knows that she will never again look at old stone without wondering what it remembers. She is sitting on the citadel steps when Calder comes and sits beside her. Not close enough to crowd. Close enough to be there. They sit in silence. For a moment, the sky above them shifting from deep indigo toward the first grey of dawn, the torches burning lower as the night gives up. The Elder Council will want to speak with you at first light, he says. I know. There will be formal proceedings. It will take months. The Dawn alliances will need to be individually reviewed, the affected houses given process, the documentation verified by independent. I know, she says again quietly. He stops. I have never done any of this before, she says. She is looking at the sky. I do not know how to be what I apparently am. I have spent my entire adult life learning how to scrub stone without my hands bleeding, and how to read a room to know which way the danger is coming. From a pause. Those are not useless skills, I think, but they are not, whatever it is I am now supposed to be. Calder is quiet for a moment. When I became Supreme Alpha, he says, I was 23. My predecessor died in a territorial conflict that I ended by the narrowest margin that can still be called a victory. The night after, when the council confirmed the title, I went back to my rooms and sat on the floor for approximately 2 hours, because I did not trust my own legs. He says it with the simple factual delivery of someone reporting weather. I did not know how to be what I was. I learned, mostly by doing it wrong and surviving the consequences. Seravin looks at him. You sat on the floor, she says, for 2 hours, the Supreme Alpha of the Varenthis realm. I had just turned 23. A very slight pause. The floor was cold. It helped. Something opens in her chest. Not the bond, not male, something smaller and more human than either. Something that has been completely absent from her life for so long she almost does not recognize it. She almost smiles. I grew up believing I was cursed, she says, after a moment. The hair, every pack I ever came near before Thessaly acquired me had the same response. Bad omen, unnatural, keep it covered and keep moving. I spent so long trying to be invisible that I forgot I was doing it. It became automatic, being unseen. You are not unseen now, Calder says. No, she looks down at her hands. The ring is still in her left fist. Her mother's letter still folded over her heart. I am terrified, she says plainly. I want you to know that. Not of Thessaly, that part is done. Terrified of the rest, of being wrong, of getting something important wrong when it matters. That fear, he says, is the right one to have. The ones who are not afraid of being wrong are the ones who do not notice when they are. She looks at him. He is looking at the sky, the pale light of coming dawn catching the silver of his eyes, and she thinks. She has known this person for approximately 6 hours, and she can. Already read him the way she has read rooms for survival, which means either the bond is doing something she does not fully understand, or he is, for reasons she cannot yet name, genuinely legible to her, genuinely without performance. The bond, she says. What you felt at the Standing Stones. Yes, is that why you is this? She stops, tries again. I need to understand what is real. I need to know if you would have made the same choices tonight without it. He turns to look at her then, fully. The way he looked at her wolf form at the Standing Stones, direct and complete and without management. The bond told me you were mine to protect, he says. My own judgment told me that anyone who has survived what you survived and still walks out of that citadel to face 3 packs alone, rather than stay behind a door is someone worth protecting. A pause. The bond confirmed something I think I would have arrived at regardless. It simply saved time. Seravin holds his gaze. The sky behind him is turning the specific blue-grey of the last minutes before sunrise. The colour that exists only in that threshold between night and day, neither one thing nor the other. She knows that colour. She has always lived in it. I do not know how to do this, she says quietly. Any of it. The council, the proceedings, the whatever I am supposed to rebuild of what my parents had. Or this. The word this encompasses a small gesture between them. I am 24 years old, and I spent 6 of those years as a servant in a house that was surveilling me, and I have never. She stops. Neither have I, he says, quietly, without elaboration. The simplicity of it lands harder than anything complicated would have. Seravin, Mael says, from the deep, warm place inside her, where the ancient beast rests with her eyes half open, watching the dawn the way she has watched 1,000 dawns. Content for the first time in 24 years. Let it be simple for a moment. You have earned a simple moment. Seravin breathes. The sun breaks the horizon. It comes the way it always comes, not announced, not gradual. A specific instant when the first true light clears the edge of the world, and everything it touches is no longer dark. It hits the citadel grounds, and the standing stones, and the withdrawing torch lines, and the two people sitting on the stone steps, and it is warm, and it is ordinary, and it is the most extraordinary thing she has experienced in 24 years of life, because she is present for it, fully, completely, without hiding. She opens her hand. Her mother's ring sits in her palm, the sapphire catching the new light and throwing it back deep and blue and true. She puts it on. It fits. Of course it fits. There she is, Mael says softly, not triumphant, not dramatic. The simple recognition of a guide who has walked a very long road with someone and is simply glad they arrived. There is the daughter of Lyra and Aldrich Vale. There you are. Tears come then, quietly, without warning, the way grief does when it has been waiting for permission. Not the sharp grief of loss, the softer, more complex grief of receiving something you were owed a long time ago, and understanding all at once both the gift and the cost of it. She does not fight it. She lets it come, and it comes for a few breaths, and then it settles, the way water settles, finding its level. Calder does not speak. He does not move away. He is simply present beside her, in the way of someone who understands that some things need a witness, and not an answer. After a moment she straightens. She wipes her face with the back of her hand. She looks at the ring. My mother wrote in her letter, she says, that the bond, when it came, would find its match. She said not to be afraid of it. A breath. She said she and my father were fated too. And, he says, and she said it was the greatest thing that ever happened to either of them. Seravin looks at him. She was a very practical woman, I think. The letter was 3 paragraphs. She did not waste words. Something moves in Calder's expression, not the controlled near blankness she saw in the great hall. Something warmer, quieter, the expression of a man who has kept his heart in a locked room for a long time and is noticing, with careful attention, that the door is open. I think, he says, that I would have liked her. I think, Seravin says, she would have been deeply skeptical of you, and then eventually grudgingly impressed. That is a reasonable arc, he says. And she does smile then, small real, the kind that comes from nowhere and means something. He sees it. Something in his own face sets as in response. A softening so subtle that if she were not paying attention, she would miss it entirely. She is paying attention. The bond between them hums, steady, warm, the specific warmth of something that has always been true and is simply now being acknowledged. 3 months later, the Elder Council concludes its formal proceedings. Every documented connection between the current realm's power structure and Harren Dawn's orchestrated dismantling of the Vale dynasty is reviewed, verified, and entered into the official historical record. Several houses lose privileges. Several alliances are renegotiated. 2 High Alphas resign their positions, rather than face the full accounting. They are the ones whose families benefited most directly, and they know it. Thessaly Dawn is stripped of her title. She is not imprisoned. The Elder Council, after deliberation, determines that her culpability is real but distinct from her father's, and the punishment is structured accordingly. She is removed from the realm's power structures permanently and completely. On the day the ruling is delivered, Seravin is present in the council chamber. Thessaly looks at her once, across the space of the room, a long look, amber eyes finally empty of calculation, and then she looks away. Seravin does not feel victory. She does not feel relief exactly. She feels the particular settling of something that has been held in suspension for a long time finally coming to rest. She walks out of the chamber into a corridor where winter light falls through tall windows onto old stone. She stops and puts her hand over her mother's letter, still folded inside her clothing, where she has carried it since the night in the chamber. She would be proud, Mael says. I know, Seravin thinks, not with grief. With something that is learning slowly to feel like belonging. The ceremony is held at the Standing Stones, not the Convergence. That alignment will not return for another 24 years. This is its own ceremony, without precedent, because the thing being marked has not happened in the living memory of anyone in the realm. The Elder Council spent 6 weeks designing the rites. Elder Solara redesigned them twice and finally said she would simply speak from her heart, which was correct. The stones are lit at dusk, their sapphire blue crests glowing softly in the early dark. The gathered wolves of Varenthis form a wide circle, not 3 packs kept separate by political distance, but one assembled body. The particular gathering that happens when enough of the walls between people have come down to make the space feel different. Seravin walks to the center. She is not in grey. She wears deep sapphire blue, a shade that matches the fur of the sovereign, with silver-white embroidery at the edges. Not tribal patterns mimicking her wolf's markings, but her own design. Something she spent several late evenings working out at a small table in her rooms, while Mael offered quiet suggestions. The crescent scar beneath her left eye is visible. Her hair falls free. Sapphire blue on the left, silver-white on the right. The sharp division between them, catching the glow of the standing stones and throwing it back. She has stopped covering it. She stopped covering it the morning after the convergence, and she has not covered it since. And the realm has had 3 months to adjust to the sight of it, and the realm has adjusted, the way most things adjust when they are simply given no alternative. Calder is already at the center. He looks at her the way he had been looking at her for 3 months, with that specific direct attention that has never diminished, that she has stopped trying to interpret and simply learned to receive. He is in his ceremonial attire, dark and minimal, the single obsidian clasp at his shoulder. His near-white eyes are warm in the stone light. Elder Solara stands before them both. She speaks briefly, as she said she would. She names the veil line, she names the years, she names the cost. She speaks about what it means for a realm to reckon honestly with its own history, which takes longer than it should, and is worth every moment of the difficulty. She speaks about what the mate bond is and is not. Not a chain, not a claim, but a recognition. The moon goddess's acknowledgement that certain people carry complementary purposes and benefit from facing them together. Then she is quiet. "Do you have words?" she asks them both. Calder looks at Seravin. She had planned something. She spent a considerable amount of time planning something, and then she stood in front of it this morning and understood it was not what she wanted to say, and she set it aside. "I spent a long time being afraid to exist," she says, looking at him, the words coming in their own order. Afraid to take up space. Afraid to believe anything said to me that wasn't a form of correction. I pushed away the voice that was trying to tell me the truth for 6 years, because the truth was too heavy to carry alone. She breathes. "I am not afraid anymore. Not because everything is safe. It isn't, and it won't be. And I think I am learning to be someone who does not require safety as the condition for being present." She pauses. "I trust Mael. I trust the bond. I trust you." A beat. That last one took the longest. I want you to know that means the most. Something shifts in his face. The locked room, she thinks. The door all the way open now. "I built walls," he says, "because I decided after my parents died that attachment was a liability I could not afford. I told myself it was discipline. It was fear wearing the right clothing." His silver eyes hold hers. "You walked out of a citadel door to face 3 packs in a torn grey dress. I have watched you, in 3 months, learn the names of every wolf on my council staff. I have watched you sit with elders who should have protected you, and not once remind them of their failure. I have watched you carry your mother's letter and not let it make you bitter when it had every right to." He stops. "I do not have a wall left that makes sense to keep. You dismantled them by being exactly what you are, and I did not notice until they were already gone." The standing stones pulse softly around them. Mael's presence is immense and gentle and says nothing. She simply breathes, the ancient beast, slow and content in the deep of Seravin's chest, listening to the moment with the patience of something that has been waiting for it, across the long reach of time. Elder Solara speaks the binding words. The bond between them, which has been real since the night of the convergence, which has been building and deepening and finding its shape across 3 months of early mornings and late councils and arguments about strategy and small accidental moments of unexpected ease. The bond blazes to life in the visible spectrum. A warm silver-blue light radiated from both of them at the point where their hands are joined, spreading upward and outward like something breathing its first full breath. The gathered wolves see it. The sound that moves through the circle is not a cheer exactly. It is larger than that, with more breath in it. The sound of a large group of people exhaling something they did not know they were holding. Calder presses his forehead to hers. Our story is only beginning, he says, which she recognizes as true in the specific way that true things are recognizable. Not because they are comfortable, but because they fit. I know, she says, and she means it without fear. 6 months after that, Seravin stands on a high balcony of the citadel in the early morning. The realm below is not healed. Healing takes longer than 6 months, and she knows this, and she has stopped expecting it to move faster than it is able. There are still houses renegotiating, still wolves who are uncertain, still work being done at every level of the structure that Harrendord left behind him, like a building designed to fall in a particular direction. But there is work happening. That is different from before. She has her hands on the balcony railing, the sapphire ring catching the light, her hair loose in the morning air. The crescent scar beneath her eye has faded somewhat, not gone, never gone, but lighter, the way the marks of old things become part of the face rather than injuries upon it. You are thinking too loudly, Mael says, with the fond quality she has developed over 6 months of being fully present, rather than suppressed, am I? You are cataloguing everything that still needs doing. You do this every morning. Someone has to. Yes, Mael agrees warmly, and someone will, but not in the first 5 minutes after sunrise. Seravin breathes. She lets the morning be the morning. She lets the light be light. She lets the standing stones at the far end of the grounds simply stand, their crests invisible in the day, present nonetheless. She thinks about her mother, who hid her in a cloak and carried her to a border and died 3 hours later. She thinks about her father, whose hand she can read in documents but will never hold. She thinks about 6 years of grey dresses and stone floors and a voice she pushed away, that never stopped speaking. She thinks, I am here, I am standing in the light. I am not hidden. I am here. Mael says nothing. She simply rests, enormous and ancient and quietly completely content, and breathes alongside her. The door behind her opens. Calder steps out carrying 2 cups. He hands her one without ceremony and stands beside her at the railing, looking out at the same view. They are not performing anything for anyone. It is very early and the world has not begun yet, and they are simply here, together, on a balcony above a realm that is learning, slowly and imperfectly, to do better. Council convenes at the 2nd hour, he says. I know. The Kael'pak's representative wants to discuss the Northern Territory boundaries again. I know. I think he is right about the Eastern line. A pause. I think so too. He drinks his cup. I was not going to say that to him first. I will say it, she says. He will receive it better from me. Yes, Calder says. He will. He says it simply, without any shadow of anything complicated, the way he has learned to say things that are true about her without making them into a concession. Just a fact. The way the sunrise is a fact, ordinary and worth noting. She looks at him. He is looking at the horizon. There, she thinks, not to Mael, to herself, to the version of herself who sat in a servant's room 6 months ago, not trusting furniture that was not meant for her. There, look. I used to think, she says, that the bond would feel like being completed. Like a missing piece. That is how Mael described it once, finding the match. And, he says, it does not feel like that. She looks at the light on the standing stones. It feels like being accompanied, like the difference between carrying something alone and carrying it with someone beside you. The weight is the same. The carrying is different. Calder is quiet for a moment. That, he says, is a better description than anything the council texts have managed in 800 years of trying. She almost smiles. She does smile. He turns to look at her. and she turns to look at him, and the bond between them is warm and ordinary and true, and the morning opens around them the way mornings do, impermanent and unrepeatable, and entirely quietly enough. From the deep of her chest, settled and vast, and finally resting in a world that knows her name, the sapphire sovereign breathes. "You are home," Mael says. The last daughter of the Vale line stands in the light. She is home.